And thank you all for being here. I just can't tell you how delighted I am to be back, first of all in the UK, but particularly in Sheffield. But to see this many people from across the different sectors that have come together because you have some passion and some concern about what's happening to children. I don't think the stories are any different. It doesn't matter if you're in the UK or if you're in the United States or if you're in other countries around the world. The stories are all the same, and that is that we have children in crisis. And so the fact that we all come together and we want to talk about what can we do collectively is really the beginning of the solutions that we're all looking for. So I'm here to share a few things, but I do want to tell you that to engage in this discussion about feeding children, you'll find out in the next 30 minutes or so, and I know I'm between you and lunch, but the next 30 minutes or so, you're going to find out that I'm quite passionate. I have spent my entire career in feeding children in school nutrition in the United States, and sometimes fighting for the cause, and other times jumping in and trying to change things. I am someone who was a practitioner. I did run a school nutrition program in Wisconsin, which is in the northern half of the United States, for about 25 years. And that was when we were beginning breakfast programs. That is when we were beginning to look at summer feeding as a whole around the country. But I am one that, if you go to the United States, they'll tell you I'm one that will never take no for an answer. I can't tell you how many school authorities said to me, we can't do breakfast because in the United States we bus people on school buses. So the busing privilege that we gave children became a barrier to breakfast. That doesn't work for me. So I never said no. And at one time there was some of the companies that were selling drinks to schools, and those were exclusive contracts, and they would give you great big sports boards and all kinds of things with their logos on if you got into an exclusive contract to sell some of their beverages. And I'll never forget they came to one of my districts at one time and tried to get the head teacher to buy into this and to sign these contracts. And they said, well, if you sign a contract for your authority, that means that the food service has to sign in as well. And he leaned across the desk to her and he said, do you know my food service director? And she said, no, never met her. He said, you know what, you go ask her, and if you survive, I'll do it. Of course, she never came to see me, but because I'm all about kids. And I just can't thank you enough for being here to share that story. That's what we're here for. That's what I spent my career doing. But thank you also just very briefly to the city officials in Sheffield. I've been in a great partnership, a great conversation with those folks for the last couple of years about children and the way they want to care about children. My colleagues at Hallam University to have this wonderful day. I appreciate that and I thank you. And of course, Lindsey Graham for bringing me here and making sure that we have this partnership. But to open this door about our most valuable and our most vulnerable population, and it is truly also the future of our world, and that's our children. And I think you've seen some of these stories already, where we have the same story in the United States, that hunger doesn't take a vacation. And I know people all over the country in the United States have said to me, you know what, Katie, that's a parent's responsibility. We are not going to govern parents' responsibilities. And I can't agree with you more. That parents should be responsible for their children and their children's welfare. But I also can agree that children should be responsible for the environment that they live in. We cannot make those children responsible for that environment. They didn't ask to be there. They didn't create that environment for themselves. And so we can't make them responsible for that environment. We must do something to help those children move out of that environment. And I look at it as if we don't do something. And I say to people all the time, if we don't start right now, what happens? And if we don't do something, children will continue to be hungry. Children have always been hungry. I've heard that one too in legislators' offices. That, you know, there's always been hungry children. They put their boots on, pull them up tight, and they'll survive. But what we're finding now is we have angrier and angrier children, don't we? And we're finding now that they're becoming more angry because it just seems like there's no way out. And I don't know how I survive or how I even figure out how to get out if I'm hungry. It's almost impossible because we've seen over and over again that it's a right, it's a basic right. And so we talk about food. And we don't talk about giving them money or toys or football equipment. We're talking about food. And so I'll talk a little bit about what we do in the United States and how we think this through. It doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. We have our challenges, believe me. And that's why I love this partnership. I love what we've been doing over the last couple of years in sharing the way people do things. I can't wait to talk to some of you. Some of the things I've heard, I'm writing notes feverishly to take back with me when I go back. But we know that hunger does not take that vacation. And so many years ago, in the United States, of course, from World War II is how we got our National School Lunch Program. And so many young men came to the military in the draft for World War II, and they weren't fit to serve in the military because of malnutrition. We had just come out of the Depression. So we started the National School Lunch Program. Later on, we became involved in the National School Breakfast Program, where breakfast is available. And then came just another need, where we saw children really in severe need over the holidays. Now, in the United States, those children can be out 3 full months. All of June, all of July, all of August. So we have 3 full months where they are out of school in some cases. It depends upon what state you live in, so it's a little bit different around the country. But we realized there was this severe need for children in hunger. And so we decided to do something about this. And briefly, I'm not going to go through all this, but we do have 15 nutrition assistant programs in the United States. These are for various things, whether you're pregnant, lactating, or nursing mothers, small children. We have the USDA foods in the middle. You see the Healthy Choices American Grown, where we take things off the agricultural market and put it into these food systems. Right now, those of you that have seen the news on TV, the state of Texas is literally underwater. The United States Department of Agriculture steps up. Our schools and our shelters open up, and it's all federally provided foods from the agricultural market in the United States that then comes to their aid and helps those people. But all of those things work together. TeamNutrition.org is a phenomenal nutrition education website that's all put on with the United States Department of Agriculture. But it touches 1 of 4 Americans in their lives each year. And so we really look at both the obesity issue as well as the food insecurity issue. And many legislators will say to us as well, you know, how can we have obesity and food insecurity? That doesn't make sense to me. Well, you know what? Part of food insecurity is the wrong kind of food. We don't have healthy people if we have obese people and all the health issues that come with it. Those foods that people eat during those summer holiday breaks aren't always the best, but it's the easiest to access and it's cheap. And so we have that big combined issue. We know that 20% of our households in the U.S. report some level of food insecurity. That some level of somehow, somewhere along the line, they're worried about their next meal. We have 72% of those households, over 21 million, receive free or reduced price meals in the United States because of household. Now that's up to 185% of the poverty level. And that's how we figure it out in school. We have a second level. There's a free meal level, and then a reduced price meal level, and then the full paying child. But we ask that question all the time in communities. What happens when there's no school? And so we actually have 2 options in the United States, because we know that there are other holidays. There's the winter break holiday, the spring break holiday, different holidays that go on during the year. So we have 2 options. One is called the seamless summer option, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that one. But that one is when you are a school, a food authority, local authority, and you run a school lunch program, school meals program from your school buildings. You can use this seamless summer option. And that means during any holiday break, you can continue to extend your school breakfast and lunch program. We also have now supper programs where children are getting 3 meals a day. And so you can just simply extend those programs if you're already a qualified school authority, local authority running a school lunch and breakfast program. And so your reimbursement rate, they get a reimbursement per meal from the federal government, from the national government. And so it's per meal served is how we get our money back into the program from the federal government. And so that seamless summer program, or the breakfast and lunch program, you get the reimbursement rate that you would normally get during the school year. And it's a little bit lower than what you would get in a regular summer food service program. But many choose to do that because they hire their staff stays employed all summer long or all during holiday breaks. So economically, we have all these people that would no longer be making a salary or hourly wage during those periods of time as well. And so that works. We continue to buy food. There's a huge push in the United States to buy local food. Farmers, and of course in the summer in particular, in most of the country of the United States, that's when the farmer's ready with produce. And so those local farmers can continue to sell food to the school systems. during those times because we have this meal program that continues on. But the one I'll talk to you a little bit more about today is the summer food service program. And that is that anybody, anywhere, can start one and be a feeding site. We have 2.3 million children served on any average day through the summer feeding program. And about 1.4 million served on any average day through the seamless summer program within their schools. So about 3.7 million children a day are reached with food in their communities. With this, and I'll talk a little bit now about just the school food service, the summer food service program. The funds are provided by the United States Department of Agriculture. It is funded by the federal government at the federal level. But then each state agency has to administer that. And so they go out and they review things and they pay attention to what's going on. You turn in your counts each month to them, and that's who gives you the federal funding in return. The way it works is any child from birth to age 18 can show up at any site, no contact, no name, no nothing, and can eat free of charge. It doesn't matter who you are, you don't have to identify yourself, you don't have to be with a parent. It's, of course, if you're really little, we hope a parent comes with you, but they can bring their babies in buggies, and we will have food for them. And some sites will even have formula for them. So it's any child birth to age 18. They come to any site that's open during the summer or during a holiday and eat lunch for free with no questions asked. They have to look to see, first of all, are you capable of doing it? Do you have an accounting practice? I mean, there's an accounting situation here. You have to be able to count meals, send in for your meals. How is your accountability? Do you have a place to serve food safely? If you can't necessarily prepare food, many of those sites will contract with the local school district that is cooking food on site. And I'll show you some pictures in a little bit where we have literally emptied out canteens in our local authorities, and they set up literally dispensing sites. One site that Lindsay and I visited last summer was serving over 6,000 meals out of one canteen, just shipping it out. And the different charities would come up with their trucks or their vehicles, and they would load the cars with food, and off they go, because they would call in their numbers each morning. And so anybody that could possibly qualify to be a summer feeding site is what we're hoping to do. And we really encourage people anywhere. We also go to the sites. We know that transportation is a huge issue, especially in severe impoverished areas for those children to get food. And so we take our school buses in many cases and we go to the sites. We found out that school bus drivers know where kids are because they go to every child in every rural part of America and bring them to a school building. They go down some of the worst dirt roads in a school bus. And so we know the bus drivers know how to get there. And many times we load up the bus driver, who now is employed in the summer as well, and we load up a cook and buckets of hot food and buckets of cold food, and off they go to some of the worst impoverished places in America. And when that school bus stops, we can attest to it last summer. They come charging at the bus. And some of the pictures I will show you, the little children have no shoes, little panties, pajamas, just coming to the bus. And they'll get on the bus, and in hot areas where it's very hot in the south part of the country, the buses are conditioned. So you get on this lovely bus and you sit there and you eat your lunch. And so we bring food to kids in every possible setting. What we have is a rule called Congregate Feeding. One of the rules is that the children have to eat the food on site. And that's for a variety of reasons. And that's where I get back to my issue that it's just food. We don't give them anything they can take away to sell or give away or anything. We just nourish them. And so they must sit there and eat their lunch. Now there are waivers you can get. You can get a heat waiver so that if it's a certain temperature, above a certain temperature, you don't have to force children to stay sitting there because it's too hot. We don't want them sunburned or whatever. And I hate to say it, but there's also a violence waiver. And that is if there's a felony crime, a murder or a rape or an armed robbery within 6 blocks, within 72 hours of the feeding site, the children can come and get the food and go. Because, of course, we don't want children in dangerous situations as well. But anywhere and everywhere, we can get to children. We get to them. Homeless motels are another place children are there in these hotels. And we literally had a bus driver come back one day when we were at a site last summer. And he had just delivered all over his route. And he came back and he said, I need 90 more meals. I have to get 90 more meals. Why? Well, there's these homeless motels. I know they're there, and I know the kids are behind those doors. And I know that the single moms or single dads are out working because they have to even survive in that little hotel room. And I know the children are there, and they're not supposed to be in the United States. They're supposed to be age 12 before they're left alone. But we know that can't be in many cases. And this bus driver knew they were there. And he knew that it was too dangerous for the children to leave that hotel room and come to the bus because of gangs and pedophiles and everything else that goes on in horrible situations. And so they gave him the 90 meals, and off he went, and he came back and he gave away every one of those meals because he knew they were there. And he went and got those meals to those children. So we want to make sure that there's food available for children when summer is there, or any holiday in that time. So this is just sort of how it works. We start at USDA, we provide food, we provide the funding, the full funding for it. Goes to the state agency that monitors it. We find sponsoring organizations, and then we find sites for them if they're eligible to serve children. And I talked a little bit about this. Who is the sponsor? What is a sponsor? And as you can see, it's any organization that can handle the program. And a sponsor can be somebody who feeds 10 children, 15 children. A sponsor can be somebody who feeds 5,000 children. But any small organization, anywhere that they want to gather children together. We saw one where it was a tiny, tiny church, and the whole church and the reception hall was only as big as a half of this room. And the 3 elderly women, they were all in their 70s, knew that their little neighborhood had a lot of children that were probably not in the best conditions for the summer. And they were worried about them. So they went to the church board and they said, do you mind if we use the church and the little hall to have a summer program? They volunteered their time all summer, these 3 women. And any child could be dropped off there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. No questions asked, no charge. So it was daycare as well as them caring. Well, they were bringing their own food and trying to feed these children any way they could until they found out about the summer feeding program. And so they became so excited because they could get breakfast and lunch every day for those children. They took it a step further upon themselves, and they told the teenagers in that neighborhood that, of course, you can eat as well, but if you want to come drug-free, alcohol-free, and you want to help these children read and play with these smaller children, you're welcome. And the day we were there were over a dozen young people there, helping the kids sing songs, cleaning tables, getting lunch ready, setting it up when it was delivered, sitting with these small children. 2 little boys had a birthday party that day. They were both age 6, and they had never had a birthday party before. And they were having a birthday party for these 2 little boys. They were so excited. And they thought we were all there visiting. They thought we were there for the party. So they thought this because of their birthday party. But so it can happen in the smallest place. And we just try to make it as easy as possible. Now they contracted with a local school district that was preparing meals. And so it was delivered to their door every day. The hot lunch and then a cold breakfast for the next morning was delivered to their door for all these children. So anybody and everybody can become a sponsor. And what is a site? It has to be somewhere where it's safe for children. We have to make sure that it's accessible. In the United States, we also have the law that it must be handicap accessible, that if a child with special needs, special physical needs as well, needs to come, they have to be able to access that as well. The difference in some of our programs in the United States, this summer feeding program, is that adults cannot participate. It is only for children. And it's heart-wrenching as adults come to the bus or come to the sites and beg for food, because they too have no food. It is absolutely heart-wrenching. So what they've done in many cases, and we're talking about maybe partnering with the city of Milwaukee, is a great example. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we're the Hunger Task Force of Milwaukee. They have a partnership around the table every month of all the different charities and organizations that are caring about hunger in that community. Salvation Army is there, the Boys and Girls Clubs are there, the YMCA is there, anybody that does charity, religious charities are there, faith-based organizations. So what they do is they cover the cost of the adults in many cases. So if you want to feed your adults in your site, just tally them on a different sheet and you send it to the Cole Foundation, because that's how they set up different areas of the city of Milwaukee. And then those adult meals are being covered as well, to being paid for. And so those are some of the issues that we're still working on, because it is heart-wrenching when you have these adults come up and need the food as well. They'll even ask to look through garbage cans because the children sit there and eat. But wherever they're there, but again, we really look at safe settings as well. We want children to be safe. Park and rec departments departments everywhere around the United States, if they have summer athletic activities, I'll guarantee you they're doing the summer feeding program. Because food also brings kids to those sites. And they know that they come out of unsafe environments to safe environments during the day. We really encourage enrichment activities, that something is going on there. Whether it's education, remedial reading, math, spelling, language, anything, even sports, because they learn to work as a team, they learn to work as a community. We think arts and crafts are a great way for kids to learn to share and work together. All of those things we see as enrichment activities, because that brings children together and teaches them to socialize and to learn how to deal with themselves in sort of free time. And it's not that structured time. But in many cases, they'll have other kinds of educational opportunities that are going on as well. And you'll be surprised how creative people have become. I've been to some sites where reading is the topic of the site. And kids come so excited about the next book they're going to read. And they've learned to read. And they're so excited because they can read. And then many times there'll be other charities that donate books, and the children get to take home that little book that they read at the site that day. And so we try to encourage all kinds of activities so that children are learning a lot of different social skills as well as educational skills. So here are some of those activities. It can be physical activities. Learning to ride a bike might be things where volunteers will come with bikes and they'll teach children how to ride a bike. Or the local police department will come with helmets, free helmets for children, because they have all kinds of programs that go on where children can get a free bike helmet. And so they'll give every child a free bike helmet and teach them how to ride a bike. And then they can leave the helmet at the site, and when they come the next day, there's some bikes there for them to ride as well. And so all kinds of activities are going on in those areas. And we really do also encourage the young people to come and volunteer. In many cases, some of these people are people that are required to do volunteer hours for school. The academic universities, those children are home for the summer. They're delighted to come and make it into an internship or some kind of hours that they're required to do for their degrees at their universities. And so they get involved in these projects. And it's just wonderful the way they begin to interact. And they also become really good role models for these young people as well. And how furthering in their education has helped them change the way life is going to, the outcome of their lives is because of education. And what's in a meal? We do not have, we've had some stricter nutrition standards during the academic year, which we are dealing with right now in the United States. But in the summer, it's a little bit looser. It's not quite as restrictive. We don't do quite the nutrient analysis that we normally do during the school year. But these are the requirements. We have something called offer versus serve, so children can pick and choose from these things. At breakfast, they need to have 3 items, so they can pick a couple of those items. At lunch, they need to have at least 3 items as well. But those are the things you need to offer in the lunch program or the breakfast program. Now, if we're bringing the food to the site, many times it's just packaged in a bag, and we give them the bag, and that's what they have. Otherwise, there are times where, especially in the buses, they can pick and choose because we have big coolers or big heat boxes where they can pick different kinds of things to choose from. But that's really what's required in that meal that the children take. Now, if they sit down and eat, the requirement is that they sit and eat. But if they have an apple or a bag of carrots, they can certainly carry that off with them. But we really want to ensure that the child is eating the food, because that's what the program is based on right now. Here's the cost. This is what the federal government, the national government would give to each site per meal. And again, it's a per meal reimbursement. I did try to convert it into pounds there. And thank you to the computer. I'm really not so good when I'm shopping at TK Maxx, but then I use a plastic card, and I heard that's free. So hopefully. But anyway, so at breakfast, we do a rural or self-prep site. So in other words, we're working very hard with the rural development in the United States. That's an office of rural development. And we know that a lot of the poverty pockets are out there in the rural areas. And so if you're in a rural area and you're willing to start these programs, or if you have a self-prep site where you're actually doing the cooking and getting the food ready, then you get a little bit more than if you're a site where food is being just delivered to you, or you've ordered it from another place. And so there's a little bit difference in reimbursement rate. But doing the summer feeding program, those reimbursement rates for lunch and breakfast are a little bit higher than what we would normally get in the school food service program during the academic year from the national government. But that's the money we would get back for each meal that we serve. And we get it after the fact. We do it, we send in our numbers, and then we get the money back. Still a summer hunger gap. We know there is. We know that we've worked really hard in the last couple of years, the United States, and it has been particularly an interest of the Obama administration to feed children, to feed all of America, not just children. We have a lot of different programs to cover from birth to the day you pass. But we know that summer feeding is a way to really get kids engaged and keep them engaged. But we know that we're reaching about 4 million, and we serve close to 33 million for lunch every day in school, in academic year. So we know that there's still this issue, and there's so many barriers, as you can see right here. People don't know about the program. There's lack of sponsors and sites. That transportation to summer meal sites is so difficult in many cases. Lack of volunteers to help the sites. And so whether there's really a need or not. So we're really working on all of these issues. And we sort of target states. We have some target states. It's been a high priority since 2013. And we like to really collaborate in many different areas. And so we're using the state, local, and federal different departments to collaborate. Anywhere anybody's willing to talk to us and to say, we're willing to look at this, we're willing to give it a try, we really move forward on it. Now some states, as you see in the middle there, the governor of the state has decided this is also an issue that they really want to charge and they really want to make sure that they're doing in their own state. So then it's a little bit easier for us because they really lead the charge. And in many cities, in Milwaukee, I use them as an example all the time because I'm very familiar with what they're doing there. But they've just led the charge in feeding people in the city of Milwaukee, no matter where the neighborhoods are. And we were in some pretty rough neighborhoods when we visited. And we do this thing with the USDA called Targeting States Initiative, where we look at certain states each year and we say to them, all right, we're going to give you some special help. We're going to be there. We really want to work very hard at targeting your state. We know there's a need. We know there's poverty in your state. And so we really want to put some special expectations and some responsibilities to that state. And it's been working very effectively because they get a little extra help from us as well at the national level. And so it's been really working very effectively, and we've really been moving things forward that way. So here's how we market the program. You'll see these all over. You know, sometimes when there's elections, people put up signs. In the United States, they can put signs everywhere if there's an election forever. And so we're already beginning to see presidential signs. You know, we're not going to vote for a year and a half. But anyway, so you'll see these signs all over the place. Seamless summer feeding, mobile stop, and I'm going to talk about the mobile stop in a minute. Summer feeding program, food that's in while school is out. All these catchy little things that it makes it a fun place to be. It's not, because you can come with no questions asked, there's no stigma. And there's usually an activity, a fun activity going on, or other activities going on. I mean, really, you go to the swimming pool in the summertime. There's free food. Okay, that's pretty easy. There's no stigma to that. There's hundreds of children at the swimming pool. And so we try to advertise everywhere so parents and children know that there's food available in those sites. Here's some more marketing. This is when we followed a bus, and I'm going to talk about the bus that's converted to have a seating area for children to eat. But then this truck also followed the bus. It was a refrigerated truck, so that if more children came to the site, they had pre-made lunches and packs. And if more children than expected came to the site, that truck just opened its back door, and there were hundreds of meals. And so he followed the bus around. And so as they fed children, they just kept pulling refrigerated meals out of that truck to give those children. But that drives all over the city, talking about what they were doing. So on the bus or in the park. This is a bus in Louisville, Kentucky, and they took old school buses that were decommissioned, they called them. So they were no longer being used for school transporting students, and they reconverted them, and inside, on the right-hand side, that's inside the bus, where they put little tables and foldable chairs, and those children were in there ready to eat their lunch. Now inside the bus, it's air-conditioned, but then those same people went out and took a tarp, and this bus happens to be parked in a parking lot in a trailer park, where a lot of people have sort of mobile homes. And then there's a small park there. So they put this tarp underneath some trees in the park where you can come and sit on the tarp as well. And then at the end, all the children gather around the tarp and they play this game to keep them all, on the tarps or with that parachute game. So they're doing all kinds of physical activity. They had coloring sheets for the children. They were doing all kinds of things. And these were school cooks that are employed for the summer to do this. And they absolutely love it. They said it's the best thing they've ever done. And children just ran as soon as they parked that bus. They came charging out to get their lunches. This is one of those shipping centers I was talking about. Over 6,000 meals goes out of this canteen, where they gutted it and they set up all different shipping stations, had all volunteer high school students running. Of course, they had someone in charge, but they had high school students helping to pack and then put it into the vehicles that people were bringing. And then some of them were in another area where they were actually packing lunches into all those little white boxes, and those lunches were shipped out all over the place with a complete lunch. So they had shipping centers as well. Here are the results of our program at this point. But again, like I said, we're really trying to move forward to get even more people involved in summer feeding, because we know there's just such a drastic need of what's going on out there. These aren't just numbers. I think these pictures tell it all. We heard over and over again today that it's not just about numbers. It's not just about how many meals we're putting out and how many meals we're serving. It's about people. And here you'll see on your left-hand side a young teenage girl who works in a center holding the little girl's hand. And this little girl is not very verbal, except when she comes to the center. And when you'll see she has little plastic gloves on, because it was her job to put the cutlery out that day before the lunch arrived. And she was so excited that she was going to get to set that table and put that cutlery out. So she put her gloves on pretty early. It was quite cute, because they told her that when they got ready to do it, she had to change her gloves. But she was so excited to be wearing those gloves. And there she is in the center with this wonderful role model of a young teenage girl. And they're going to set the cutlery for the dinner. And this particular site, adults were welcome. And parents sat with their children, and they had these wonderful meals together. It was served family style. It was lovely, lovely way. On the right, you'll see the small children that just come charging to the bus. This was in Atlanta, Georgia. It was extremely hot that day. Don't know how those children were walking barefoot on that hot pavement. But charge up to that bus and get their meal, sit down and eat, and then walk back to their apartment where they're living for the quality of their life. And the fact that they know somebody cares. I just can't imagine people that say we don't want to do this, because that we shouldn't do this. Because when you see those children, and I felt all last summer, and I've been involved in this for over 30 years, but when I went and actually toured summer sites last summer, and I thought, wait, here I am in the United States of America, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we have hundreds and hundreds, millions of children that need food every day. And I don't know how I can tell, how people can say to me, why should we do that? It's a parent's responsibility. Yes, it sure is. But what do you say to that child right there that has only a little pair of shorts and doesn't even have shoes to come to the bus? Is it his responsibility to create the environment around him so that there's food for him to eat during the day? Or is it our responsibility as social people, as people in a world of social justice? Is it our responsibility to say to those children, we care about you. It doesn't matter where you live, who you are, what your religion or your race, it doesn't matter. And I'll end with a story of a very wealthy child. And I was in a school district. And it was a very affluent district. And it was a child in second grade. She was about 9 years old. And she came to school every day dressed with designer clothes, cute little hairdo, nails all done up, adorable little shoes. Mom and Dad dropped her off in a very fancy SUV. And the cooks came to me one day and said, we have a child stealing food on Friday. She's putting food in her apron, her little pockets of her dress. Stealing food. A second grade child, 9-year-old child stealing food. In this school district? Couldn't be. And we watched, yeah, it happened. And so we got a social worker involved, because again, it's not our, us school nutrition people, we don't get involved in those kinds of issues, so we got a social worker involved. And what came of it is this young girl was born to parents by mistake that were jet setters. And so what they did was that child was left home alone in the weekends and was told, don't open the door don't use the stove, we'll be back. And so she would take bread and put it in her pockets. So when people say, well, they wear designer jeans, they have a cell phone in their pocket, maybe, but who's responsible?